So I am a very unlikely host for something titled Wisdom and Instagram.
Yeah, interesting, right?
Yeah. I don't play much in social media other than periodically looking to see what my husband's kids are up to. And when Soren first introduced me to Diego, which was about 7 months ago,
Yeah, I think so.
I said, gosh, I better get an Instagram account. So just being honest here. But the truth is that this virtual room is filled with people who follow Young Pueblo and people who don't follow Young Pueblo yet. That's who's here today. And what I discovered when I joined Instagram was that every day a little bit of warmth and love and healing is shared by Diego through Young Pueblo. So I want to read today's. I cannot make you happy, but I can commit to support you in the creation of your own happiness.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for having me here. I've been here all weekend, and this has been one of the most inspiring weekends of my life by far, for sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Diego, maybe begin by helping us understand how you came to Young Pueblo and a little bit about the origin of the name that you chose for your voice.
For sure. So, Young Pueblo isn't actually my name, right? So my name's Diego Perez, and Young Pueblo is more of an idea. And it's something that I sort of stumbled upon when I sort of transitioned from the world of organizing and activism and realized that I had so much sadness, grief, and anxiety inside of me that was causing so much tension that I actually needed to deal with. And I started meditating when I was about 24 years old. And in that moment of profound meditation, I started realizing that there are also internal dynamics to liberation that I was completely oblivious to. And that sort of connected the bridge for me because, coming from the organizing world, you know how much power you have when you come together as a collective and you understand the material reality of sort of changing things so that people can have a happier, safer life. But there's also an internal dynamic of that, and I think that's what Young Pueblo really is. It literally means young people, and it's understanding that, when you think back to when we all first went to school, right, when we were going to preschool or kindergarten, and what were our teachers trying to teach us? They were trying to teach us very simple things, to not hit each other, to clean up after ourselves, to tell the truth, and generally just to be kind to each other. And these are things that some of us may be able to do as individuals, but as a human collective, we haven't mastered these skills, these fundamental skills at all. So to me, what meditating has shown me is that we're sort of in a transitional period because not only do we have so many massive challenges ahead of us as a human collective, but through those challenges, we're going to have a big attempt to really mature and grow. And that's why I really try to focus on the psychology and spirituality of things and even philosophies so that we can think a little more deeply and hopefully encourage people to find the tool that they need to really help them grow.
Yeah, you're covering a lot there. So you've created Young Pueblo as a way to really honor your own history and the history, and as you've just shared, to remind yourself and all of us about young people and about young people who are around the world. But in that identity, I'm curious what it's like for you to be both Diego and Young Pueblo. And to what extent do you feel a sense of identity around Young Pueblo versus being solidly Diego who writes under a name? What's that like to have two identities? And do you see Young Pueblo as a person?
I think it's interesting because it's sort of an accidental thing that I've sort of come across. For a while, I was writing as Young Pueblo, and then I realized, I'm going to speaking events. Obviously, I need to tell more about myself, and that's the name my mother and father gave me, Diego, and I love that name, so I'm going to move forward with that as well. But I think it's actually been pretty helpful because when you go on my Instagram or the places where I share the writing, it is very minimalistic, very black and white, and it's sort of, you come there to focus on ideas. And I really see Young Pueblo as an idea and hopefully eventually as a movement. People, not just young people in general, but all of humanity recognizing that there is an opportunity to grow, that we all collectively can mature. And it's something that really helps me with my own meditation practice, because I feel like first and foremost, I'm a meditator. Like I'm not a meditation teacher, I'm a meditation student. And one of the things that I really cultivate is non-being, and understanding that, what you see here is really a momentary phenomenon, right? It's just these rapid patterns that are fluctuating so quickly that it creates this momentary phenomenon that you see as Diego, but trying to understand that these are pieces that are coming together as opposed to a solid identity, and understanding the dynamic nature of my being is really important to me in my own progression to liberation. So having Young Pueblo be its own thing, and going to events and, supporting people face to face, it helps with, just like keeping me humble, keeping me moving forward on the path. And it's nice to support people in a way where I can still have a private life. Yeah.
So how do you decide how much of your private life to bring into young Pueblo's voice?
I think, people do their thing online through social media in such different ways. And I know for myself that I don't want to Instagram every single meal that I'm taking, and, every movement that I'm making every hour and a half and all of that, because I know for me that would be very exhausting. So I want to think about things in a long-term manner, and I know that if I focus, ask myself what 20% of my life will best support people in their growth. And that's really some of the things that I'm really learning and are sort of crystallizing inside of me while I'm meditating, trying to put that forward and intellectualizing that, because generally I see my audience as the vast majority of them have never meditated and are just starting to think about meditation as a possibility for them, and trying to show them that there is a sort of a different way that you can think about your own life and the world, and hopefully encourage them into, finding whatever tool it is that they need to be happier and freer.
So you keep that kind of 20% relatively pure. Although a friend of mine in the audience here said to me the other day, Young Pueblo's on retreat, so we're not getting these posts for a while. And I know you made a conscious decision to share that you would be offline and what you would be doing, so in order to maintain that relationship. So it makes me wonder, you have, as of this morning, 300,000 followers, and that's a lot of people. Do you feel like you're in relationship with those people? Are there certain followers with whom you've struck up an exchange? Or does it feel more like a one-directional community?
I think there's definitely an exchange, and I certainly feel accountable to people, because there is this sort of back and forth communication. I can't respond to every single direct message or comment, but it really feels like there's a back and forth. And it's nice putting something out there and then watching other people build on top of it. So seeing everything sort of steamroll and, adding that little piece to collective understanding so that people can continue developing and moving forward. But it was interesting because I did just go away for a month-long meditation course, and my wife and I were talking to each other, and I'm like, should I even say anything? Like, I can't just disappear for a month. And then it hit me, I know I don't have like a regular job, so this is, in a way, you can't just leave your job for a month, because everyone's going to be like, where are you? So I felt accountable and was like, all right, I have to let people know that I'm going to be gone and I'll be back. But it was nice. People took it well, and I think it was a good break it was good for us all to miss each other.
That's good.
Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? That's great. It's interesting when you talk about, you don't have time to respond to every post necessarily, nor would you necessarily want to respond to everyone who comments. And yet, reflecting on the conversation we heard from Jay Shetty earlier in the conference, and he talked about what he sees and the happiness it brings him when he sees kind of the offline community or online community connecting without him. And one of the things that you've been thinking about is putting questions into the community that help them find each other, which deflects a little bit you being the person with all the answers. How does that work for you? It's complex in that social media forum.
I think so, definitely, because the way I see social media is that it's really a medium for humanity to have a conversation with itself. And it's been really fascinating watching it. So I've been getting pretty serious on social media since about 2015, and putting things out there. And what I've been watching is this sort of transition from people really, I think 2014 to 2016, people were really focusing on the idea of self-love. what does that mean for me? How can I activate that in my own life? And how can I use that to sort of help me live a less mentally tense life? And for a while, everyone was taking a shot at it, trying to define it for themselves, and I did my own work around that idea as well. But then the conversation sort of shifted, because once you start understanding self-love, you start really, that's an internal dynamic. You're sort of focusing inward, and when you go inward, what do you find? You find your own personal emotional history. And then you go even deeper inward, and you start realizing, okay, this emotional history is actually impacting my daily behavior. And I actually have some work around letting go to do. And now I've seen sort of from 2017 to 2019 to present day, people are really talking about letting go. And people are sort of, nobody has the full answer. People have different facets of, of understanding their own perspective around it. But people are trying to define, what does letting go mean for me? And how can I activate that in my life? And this is really seeing that shift. And now people are really having the courage to go out and try new things, to start meditating for the first time, to really take psychotherapy seriously, or really find whatever it is that meets them where they're at. And for me, I know I don't have all the answers. I actively, when I go to events and speak, or I, occasionally when I post things, I let people know that I'm also growing. So what I can put forward are ideas that have helped me, and ideas that hopefully can help you think a little more deeply. But then nobody here really has the answer, so let's talk about it. So I've really been trying to encourage people to just, have the conversations in the comments with each other. And it's been beautiful to watch, because there's a big sort of variance there, where some people are really serious meditators and have some good techniques that have been helping them, and then other people are just getting started. And periodically, I would say every sort of month and a half, I ask people, what has actually helped you let go? And you can see the comments. People are from such a big variety of different forms of meditation, to plant healing, different energy healing modalities, different forms of yoga, asanas, different forms of psychotherapy, breath work. You can go on and on and on, things that I've never even heard of that are actually helping people. And it's awesome to see people gravitate towards certain ones, and then ask each other, can you tell me more? Where can I actually practice this? And I think that's what I try to support, because ultimately, I'm growing, so I don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Well, and so in a way, following you is following Young Pueblo is following some version or some dimension of your own growth. And I'm curious what it's like for you when you go back and look at what you posted a few years ago, or even a few months ago. Do you feel pangs of I'm in a different place now, or how do you kind of hold that history, because it's a quite public history of your own evolution?
Yeah. Definitely. I think there are definitely some pieces when I read back, I look at them and I'm like, oh, that's how I understood that back then. And since I've been, continuing to meditate, I'm hoping that I'm developing a stronger clarity. And when I look at them now, I'm like, oh, I would say that slightly differently. And to me, that's the real work, is one, being okay with that, honoring the reality of the past. And even if even today, the piece that I wrote today was something that I wrote probably 2.5, 3 years ago. And I read a little piece that I was like, oh, I might change that a little bit. But then it was like, no, this has helped so many people. I know it's helped people in the past. Let me just honor that reality. And maybe that's where some people will connect with it now in their life. And just being okay with that, because to be accepting of your own transitional nature, that literally the Diego who wrote that back then doesn't even exist anymore. I'm in an atomic situation that's changing so rapidly that this is literally a whole nother system. So to be okay with that, and really understanding that, having the focus not be on necessarily finding myself, but just freeing myself and being okay with, okay, that was imperfect, that's fine, let's move forward.
That's such a healthy attitude of evolution.
I try my best.
Yes, absolutely. So what does success look like for you? What do you hope happens as a result of sharing your experience? And I know you don't like to think of yourself as a teacher, but sharing your lived experience and some of the lessons that come to you. What do you hope things takes off as a result of this?
That's a big one, but to be honest, I really hope that people start seeing that bridge between their own life and a future global peace. Because throughout all of history, there have always been groups of people that have try to change the world for a better place. But this is, in a very wide sense, the first time in human history where not only do we have the capacity to continue trying to change the world for a better place, but we have the accessibility to have these tools and learn them and really effectively use them in our lives to change ourselves as individuals alongside that simultaneous global work. And I think in a big way, this is really the first time that that's happened, as at least in recorded history. And that is a new possibility. And I feel like because of the challenges that we have, and they're so great, being internally equipped to actually decrease your ego, to let go of these patterns that are controlling your reactions, and to have that inner space that, actually do the process of decluttering all these things that we've accumulated for such a long time, what you find is that you not only have more creativity, you have this new energy for problem solving, and you are generally a more calm and understanding person. And allowing that sort of true human nature to come forward as opposed to human habit, I think that will really help transform the world in a new way. So I'm hoping that the writing that I'm doing inspires people enough to try to shift their lives so that they can live in a new way, and hopefully they'll acquire the tools that they need to cultivate that love, that compassion, that goodwill, and that sense of creativity and power, really reclaiming your power so that you can do your part to help the world, because there's a lot of work to do.
Yes, there is, but it's such a beautiful intention, Diego, that you're helping all of us prepare ourselves or ready ourselves to be in best service of the world. And I know your intentions have their deep roots in your own activist background, and those come together in a really interesting way. I want to ask you to read a favorite passage.
Sure.
He was forewarned to read, and it was interesting when I asked you, if you'd be willing to read, and you said, let me think of, and then within like 5 seconds you said, I know exactly what I want to read. So are you still reading what you said you were going to read?
I did, but I'm also going to read a second one because that first one's a little sad, so I don't want to just end off on a sad note,
So many of us experience Young Pueblo through our eyes, and so we now have an opportunity to experience your writing and Young Pueblo's presence with our ears and our full selves as well. So thank you for agreeing to do this. And
thank you, too.
We are yours.
I spent so much time creating versions of myself that were far from the truth. Characters I would perform depending on who was around. Layers that could hide the inner dance of turmoil between my lack of confidence, the pain I did not understand, and the uneasiness that comes with reaching out to others for the love that I was not giving myself before the healing. And this piece that I think is really important to me is true power is living the realization that you are your own healer, hero, and leader. Thank you.
That's beautiful.